Yeah, I don't think it's boring. It's good that candidates get tested in this way, I suppose. But it is very repetitive. That's fair. And I think it's going to be even more so. I don't think people quite realise what it's going to be like. We're going to have hustings in which the majority of members have already voted. Now, of course, things will still be to play for. Of course, some people won't have voted and they'll want to watch how things go and listen to what the candidates say. But the majority of Tory voters, I think, are going to vote by return of post. So a clutch of hustings are going to take place after most people have already cast their ballots.
And at the moment, I mean, it really does seem, and we keep saying this, but it does seem like it is Liz Truss's to lose.
Yeah, I think that's right. Look, in any binary contest, you're always wise to consider both options potentially succeeding. Didn't we learn that in Brexit, where many people thought that it was a done deal the other way? But it's a mountain to climb now for Rishi Sunak, and that's why his campaign, I thought Tom's analysis was spot on, that's why his campaign's making so many announcements. They're throwing lots of things up in the air and seeing what succeeds. And that tends to be a sign of a campaign that's slightly on the back foot. In the same way, Liz Truss is avoiding big media set pieces, and that's what campaigns tend to do when they think they're right out in front, and the risk of making an error is a great deal more significant than any upside from any appearance you might make.
And beyond Westminster, and indeed even the Conservative membership, what do you feel the public mood about all this is? I mean, for me, it seems that it's apathy or an entire disengagement from it. I mean, it's not exactly a kind of campaign that is infusing anywhere in Britain, I would suggest.
I don't know about that. I accept that it's not exactly the sort of thing that, fills people's evenings and they think, God, we've got to go see what's happening in this race today. But on the other hand, I would argue, and it may seem counterintuitive, I'd argue, not by design, but this has actually been pretty good for the Conservative Party, because people have been able to see an array of individuals, all of whom have got something significant to offer. On the one hand, I don't think any of the 11 who put their hands up would argue that they were the complete finished article. I think that, this is going to be some learning on the job and some application of skills whilst people really bed in as the new leader and the team around that leader. But on the other hand, I think people saw people like Kemi Badenoch, Tom Tugendhat, different wings of the party, but palpably really able people who belong in government and have got something serious to offer. And I think you can say that about Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss too. And finally, it's an embarrassment of riches for the Tory party, because if you think about people like James Cleverly, you think about Priti Patel, we've got people in the Tory party who could really have been serious contenders in any other party and didn't even run. Kwasi Kwarteng, there are people who are serious heavyweight ministers who belong in government who didn't even enter this contest. And it does display, I think, a wealth of leadership in the Tory party from which the party comes out quite well.
And just very finally, Alex, I'm going to speak to Nigel Farage about this later, but we get this a lot from our viewers as well, that the situation with the small boats crisis in the English Channel hasn't really played a part in this election campaign, even though many would suggest it's a major failure of the government to be able to bring it under control. Why do you think that is? Why has migration not really played a part in the campaign?
Well, I accept your premise. I think it's one of the reasons that Priti Patel didn't run for leader. That issue has been hung around the neck of the Home Office, and most particularly its Secretary of State, someone who for a long time has been a darling of the grassroots in the Conservative Party. For the avoidance of doubt, someone I think is a good minister. But it's clear that we have not succeeded yet in getting to grips with the migration of people in small boats over the Channel from France. Neither has France, for that matter, and we may wonder how hard exactly they've been trying. I think that these two candidates think to themselves, this is something they've got to get to grips with once they get into office. I think that's the way they are looking at this challenge, and I think that's got to be right. I think people think it's completely wrong that you're able to flout any kind of system or any kind of rule and just put yourself in a boat, often putting yourself in huge danger, putting other people in danger, and then demand being picked up and ferried to these shores and then being put up no matter where you've come from. In the end, Britain's a very generous country, Darren. We take a lot of refugees through the appropriate legitimate systems, and if there's an argument to take more people, I'd be very open to that. We're a generous and decent country, but you shouldn't break the law. You shouldn't be able to come here without obeying the rules, jumping the queue, and paying people smugglers thousands into the bargain. And I think that's going to be a challenge for whoever wins this contest.